"Get out of my sight, your signature is worthless here." The COO sneered, throwing the termination letter at me. I said nothing, walked home, and quietly logged into the federal database. By morning, 42 heavy cargo trucks were completely frozen. 3 weeks earlier, my office at Vanguard's Chicago headquarters was the quietest room in the entire building. It was located on the third floor, tucked away from the chaotic shouting of the freight brokers on the trading floor and the loud hum of the server rooms. My desk was always clean, save for a dual monitor setup, a heavy-duty document scanner, and a stack of safety manifests that needed my physical signature. For 18 years, I was the guy who kept Vanguard from getting shut down by the federal government. My official title was Senior Transportation Compliance and Hazmat Safety Director. But in the logistics world, titles don't mean much. What mattered was that my name, social security number, and federal safety credentials were tied to Vanguard's DOT registration number in the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration database. I was their registered designated safety official. The DSO, to understand why that matters, you have to understand how modern freight works. Any company can buy a fleet of Peterbilt trucks and hire drivers with a commercial license. But the moment you want to haul high-value cargo, things like industrial chemicals, pressurized gases, or high-density lithium-ion batteries, you enter a regulatory minefield. Under federal law, specifically Title 49 of the Code of Federal Regulations, a logistics carrier must have a certified, registered safety official on record who personally signs off on the compliance protocols. That was me. If my credentials vanished from the federal registry, Vanguard's authority to haul hazardous materials would instantly become null and void. The system would automatically flag their DOT number, and every single truck carrying regulated cargo would be legally grounded. Over nearly 2 decades, I had built a perfect compliance record. We had 0 major safety violations. Our DOT safety rating was a pristine satisfactory, and because of that, our commercial insurance premiums were the lowest in the Midwest. The old owner, Richard Caldwell, knew my value. He paid me well, left me alone, and let me run the safety department like a military unit. But then, Richard retired. He sold 70% of Vanguard to a private equity firm, and the new board brought in Gregory Croft as the chief operating officer. Croft was the kind of guy who wore Italian leather shoes to a dirty loading dock and spoke exclusively in corporate buzzwords. He had never driven a truck, never loaded a pallet, and certainly never read a page of the Federal Safety Manual. His only goal was to squeeze every cent of profit out of Vanguard's operations to hit his EBITDA target, which would trigger a massive $500,000 bonus at the end of the year. To him, my department wasn't an asset, it was a bottleneck. It all started on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was reviewing the manifest for a new lane we were opening up between Chicago and Toronto. The shipment was massive, hundreds of pallets of high-capacity lithium-ion batteries coming from a new supplier in Shenzhen, contracted by a major consumer electronics brand. I was cross-referencing the shipping documents when I noticed a glaring problem. The paperwork lacked the UN 38.3 test summaries. Under international safety standards, every lithium battery shipment must be certified to have passed rigorous thermal, vibration, and short-circuit testing. Without that certificate, shipping them is not just illegal, it's an extreme fire hazard. A single defective cell can enter thermal runaway, producing a self-sustaining fire that burns at over 1,000 degrees. You can't put it out with water, and if it happens in the middle of a highway or on a bridge, it's a disaster. I rejected the manifest immediately and flagged the account in our system. Within 10 minutes, my office door swung open, and Gregory Croft walked in without knocking. He didn't sit down. He stood over my desk, tossing a printed copy of the rejection notice onto my keyboard. "Marcus, what is this?" Croft asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "We have a 50-car train of freight waiting to be transferred to our trucks, and the client is paying us a premium for expedited delivery. Why is this flagged?" "The supplier didn't provide the UN 38.3 test certificates," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Under 49 CFR Section 173.185, I cannot authorize this shipment without verifying those tests. If we haul these without the proper documentation, we're committing a federal violation." Croft rolled his eyes, letting out a heavy sigh. "Marcus, they're just laptop batteries. They're packaged in plastic casing. They've already cleared customs in Seattle. Do you honestly think a state trooper at the border is going to open up 5,000 boxes to check the serial numbers on the cells? It doesn't matter what the trooper does, I replied calmly. It matters what the law says. If one of those trailers catches fire on the interstate and the investigators find out we shipped them without the safety certificates, Vanguard is liable. The fines alone start at $100,000 per day of violation. And since I'm the registered DSO, my personal license is on the line. I'm not signing off on this. Croft leaned in, placing his palms flat on my desk. Listen to me very carefully. The hazmat surcharge on this lane is costing us $150,000 a week in special carrier fees and extra insurance. I've already negotiated a deal with the client to ship these under standard consumer electronics manifests. We're going to classify them as non-regulated under the retail exemption. That's manifest fraud, I said, my voice dropping an octave. That's a violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 1001. You're asking me to falsify federal shipping documents. It's called operational efficiency, Marcus, Croft sneered. The client has guaranteed us $3 million in shipping volume over the next quarter. I am not letting your bureaucratic paranoia kill this deal. You're going to log into the portal, override the safety hold, and sign the manifests. Now, I looked at the documents on my desk, then back up at Croft. I've spent 18 years keeping this company's record clean. I'm not throwing my credentials away so you can hit your quarterly bonus. Find the UN-38, 3 test reports from the manufacturer, and I'll sign it. Otherwise, those trucks stay parked. Croft's face turned a blotchy red. His jaw tightened, and he pointed a finger directly at my chest. You think you're irreplaceable, Marcus? You're just a guy with a stamp. The industry is moving forward, and we don't have room for people who block the pipeline. Sign the override today, or I'll find someone who will. I met his gaze, refusing to blink. Then you'd better start looking, Gregory, because my signature isn't for sale. Croft didn't say another word. He grabbed the paperwork from my desk, spun on his heel, and slammed my office door behind him. The glass pane in the door rattled, and for a few seconds the silence returned to my office. But I knew the peace wouldn't last. In Croft's mind, I was already gone. He just needed to figure out how to get my name off the safety registry without triggering an immediate alarm. What he didn't realize was that the registry belonged to me, not the company. And I was already preparing my exit strategy. The axe fell exactly 4 days later, on a crisp Monday morning. I had barely hung my coat on the back of my door when my desk phone rang. It was Gregory Croft's assistant, her voice sounding unusually tension-filled. She told me the COO wanted me in the executive boardroom on the 5th floor immediately. I didn't need to ask what it was about. I grabbed my leather notebook, slipped a pen into my pocket, and took the elevator up. When the elevator doors opened on the 5th floor, the atmosphere was thick. The trading floor noise was completely blocked out up here, replaced by plush carpet and wood-paneled walls. I walked into the boardroom and found Gregory Croft sitting at the head of the long mahogany table. Next to him was a young man in his late 20s, wearing a shiny gray designer suit that looked like it had been tailored for someone else. He had a gold watch that he kept adjusting, and his attention was locked onto his smartphone, his thumbs moving rapidly across the screen. "Sit down, Marcus," Croft said, gesturing to a leather chair opposite him. His voice was flat, devoid of any of the fake corporate warmth he usually tried to project. I sat down, placing my notebook on the table. "Good morning, Gregory." Croft didn't return the greeting. Instead, he slid a thin manila folder across the polished wood toward me. "We're restructuring the operations division. Over the weekend, the board approved a modernization plan. We are transitionally moving our compliance department toward an automated, software-driven model to eliminate unnecessary delays." I opened the folder. Inside was a single-sheet document titled Notice of Termination for Cause. "For cause?" I asked, looking up at him, keeping my voice level. "Insubordination," Croft said, leaning forward, his eyes narrowing. "You've repeatedly refused to authorize critical logistics lanes, specifically the new Chicago to Toronto lithium corridor. Your refusal to sign off on the cargo manifests has cost this company over $400,000 in delayed contract executions and carrier penalties last week alone." That's a direct breach of Section 4 of your employment contract, which requires you to perform your duties to the best of your ability to support Vanguard's operational revenue. He pointed to the young man next to him. This is Jason Croft. He is our new Director of Automated Logistics and Compliance. Jason has a degree in supply chain management and has spent the last 3 years working in database administration. He's going to run the new automated compliance API we're installing. We no longer require a manual safety director to bottleneck our supply chain. Jason looked up from his phone, giving me a smug, tight-lipped smile. Hey, Marcus, glad to meet you. I'm just here to clean up the pipeline, streamline things. You know, less paperwork, more throughput. I looked back down at the termination notice. The for-cause designation was a calculated move. It meant they were denying me my 6-month severance package, which was written into my contract for standard terminations. They thought they could scare me. They thought I would beg for a renegotiation or threaten to sue, which would tie me up in court for years against a private equity-backed corporation with unlimited legal resources. Under Section 4 of my contract, I said, pointing at the page, it states I must perform my duties in accordance with all state and federal regulations. Refusing to sign a fraudulent manifest is a requirement of my job, not a breach of it. But I see you've already made up your mind. The board has signed off on it, Marcus, Croft said, his smirk returning. You can take us to court if you want. Our legal team will tie you up in depositions until your savings run out. Or you can sign the acknowledgement, take your personal belongings, and walk out of here today. We won't contest your standard unemployment benefits, but the severance is off the table. I took my pen out of my pocket, clicked it, and signed my name on the line at the bottom of the page. I didn't hesitate. I didn't raise my voice. Croft looked momentarily caught off guard. He had prepared for a fight, a negotiation, maybe some shouting. The absolute calm on my face seemed to unnerve him for a fraction of a second. Understood, I said, sliding the signed document back to him. I'll pack my office. Jason will accompany you to collect your passwords and transition the database access keys, Croft said, recovering his composure. You have 30 minutes to clear the building. I stood up, picked up my notebook, and walked toward the door. Jason got up, pocketing his phone, and followed me like a guard dog. As we walked down the hallway and took the elevator back to the 3rd floor, Jason tried to strike up a conversation, his tone dripping with patronizing pity. Look, Marcus, don't take it personally. It's just the way the market is going. Automation is king, manual compliance is a dinosaur. I'm just setting up an API that pulls data directly from the shippers and auto-approves the manifests based on a custom database algorithm. It's going to save the company millions. I hope it works out for you, Jason, I said as we entered my office. I grabbed a cardboard box from the filing cabinet and began packing my desk. I kept it simple. I packed my framed certifications, my DOT Hazmat Safety Professional License, my FMCSA compliance certificates, and a couple of safety awards Vanguard had won under my tenure. I wrapped my favorite ceramic coffee mug in a sheet of bubble wrap and placed it in the box. On top of everything, I placed a small brass model of a Kenworth K100 semi-truck, a retirement gift given to me years ago by one of our veteran owner-operators, a man who had driven 3 million miles without a single scratch on his cargo. Jason sat in my chair, spinning it around, looking at my dual monitor setup. All right, Marcus, let's do the transition. I need the login credentials for Vanguard's internal compliance dashboard, the carrier safety logs, and the FMCSA portal. I pulled a notepad from my drawer and wrote down the URL and my login credentials for the internal Vanguard database. Here is the access to Vanguard's internal systems. You can reset the admin password through the IT department. Great, Jason said, typing it into his phone. And what about the federal portal? The DOT registration database where we file the MCS 90 safety forms and update the driver safety registries. I stopped packing, looking at him. The FMCSA portal doesn't use a shared corporate login. It's a federal system. Access is granted through a personal ID.me account, which is verified using my driver's license, my social security number, and my individual safety certifications. My personal credentials are what authorize me to access Vanguard's DOT file. I cannot give you my ID.me password. It's a federal offense to share federal database access credentials. Jason frowned, clearly not understanding what I was talking about. Well, how do we update the MCS 90 safety certifications then? How do we register new drivers or sign off on hazmat permits? You'll have to create your own ID.me account, I explained, my tone perfectly neutral. Then, you'll need to submit your credentials to the FMCSA, prove you have the required safety certifications, and apply to be registered as the new designated safety official for Vanguard Logistics Group under our DOT number. Once they approve you, they will grant your account access to Vanguard's portal. Jason scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. Yeah, whatever. I'll just have the IT guys contact the Federal Help Desk and reset the master admin email. We'll handle it. Anything else? No, I said, taping the top of my box shut. That's everything. I picked up the box, took my coat off the door, and walked out. Jason didn't follow me all the way to the door. He was already sitting at my desk, opening up my monitors, probably thinking about how he was going to redecorate the office. Down in the lobby, the security guard, Hank, was standing near the turnstiles. He had been with Vanguard for 15 years, and we had shared hundreds of cups of coffee in the break room. He saw the cardboard box in my arms and the look on my face, and his shoulders slumped. Marcus, you've got to be kidding me, Hank muttered, stepping out from behind his desk. They're modernizing, Hank, I said, giving him a warm smile. Got to make way for the software. Hank shook his head, looking disgusted. This place is going to run off a cliff without you, Marcus. You know that, right? That's not my cargo to carry anymore, Hank. Take care of yourself. I shook his hand, walked through the glass doors, and stepped out into the chilly autumn air. As I loaded my box into the trunk of my car, I felt a weight lift off my chest. I had kept Vanguard safe for 18 years. I had protected them from their own greed, their own shortcuts, and their own stupidity. But today, they had officially released me from that duty. And as I started my engine, I knew that without my name anchoring their ship, they were about to float straight into a hurricane. By the time I pulled into the driveway of my quiet suburban home, it was just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The house was peaceful, a stark contrast to the corporate boardroom I had been standing in just a couple of hours earlier. I carried the cardboard box of my belongings into my home office, set it on the floor, and sat down at my desk. My home office was equipped with a secured business laptop, a dedicated fiber line, and a secondary hardware security token that I used to access federal databases. For 18 years, Vanguard's safety compliance had been my life. Now, it was time to protect myself. In the corporate world, executives like Gregory Croft think that everything inside a company belongs to the company. They think that when they fire you, they simply cut your access and keep using the systems you built. But the federal government does not work that way, especially not when it comes to the transportation of hazardous materials. Under the Department of Transportation Regulations, specifically 49 CFR Part 172, a logistics carrier must have a registered designated safety official. This person is the legal anchor for the company's hazmat transportation permit. My registration was not a corporate asset. It was a personal license issued to me. Marcus Vance, based on my individual training, background checks, and federal examinations. Vanguard was only allowed to haul hazardous cargo because my personal license was legally tied to their DOT number in the FMCSA registry. If a company operates without a registered DSO, their authority to transport hazardous materials is immediately suspended. If they continue to transport such materials without a DSO, it is a Class A federal violation, carrying civil penalties of up to $99,000 per day, per vehicle. Furthermore, because my name was on file as the DSO, I was personally liable for any compliance failures. If Vanguard shipped uncertified lithium-ion batteries under a falsified manifest, and those batteries caught fire, the Department of Transportation would not just investigate Vanguard. They would investigate me. They would look at the MCS 90 safety forms, see my signature, and assume I had authorized the fraud. Under 18 U.S.C., Section 1001, making false statements on federal transit documents, is a felony carrying up to 5 years in federal prison. I was not going to jail to protect Gregory Croft's quarterly EBITDA bonus. I opened my laptop, inserted my physical YubiKey security token into the USB port, and navigated to the official FMCSA portal website. I clicked the login button and went through the ID.me authentication process. I scanned my face with my phone, verified my security keys, and entered the secure federal dashboard. My dashboard listed Vanguard Logistics Group's DOT number and their active motor carrier MC registration number. Under the Safety Personnel tab, my name was listed as the sole designated safety official. My status was active. I clicked on my profile, opened the Registration Management tab, and selected the option to disassociate credentials from carrier. A warning box popped up in bright red letters. Warn: removing your credentials will immediately leave Vanguard Logistics Group .tst 3849201 without a registered designated safety official. This carrier's authority to transport hazardous materials may be suspended. Are you sure you want to proceed? I clicked. Yes. The portal asked for a reason. I typed, termination of employment contract by carrier, effective immediately, declining further legal representation of carrier safety compliance. I clicked submit. Within seconds, a green confirmation banner appeared at the top of the screen. Disassociations complete. Notification sent to carrier, that was the first step. The moment I clicked submit, the federal system automatically updated Vanguard's DOT profile. In the eyes of the law, Vanguard was now operating without a safety net. But I couldn't stop there. I knew Gregory Croft. I knew he would try to force the shipments through anyway. He would assume that because the trucks were already loaded and the manifests were printed, they could just drive through the border before anyone noticed the paperwork change. He didn't understand that the FMCSA database was connected in real time to the automated license plate readers and DOT weigh station scanners across the country. I opened a new tab and navigated to the DOT National Consumer Complaint Database, which handles safety violations and whistleblower reports. I opened a new report under the Carrier Safety Violation category. I filled out the forms with meticulous detail. I provided Vanguard's DOT number, the specific truck numbers, and the container IDs for the 42 trailers currently loaded with the uncertified lithium-ion batteries in Chicago. I explained that the cargo lacked the required UN 38.3 test summaries, making them a volatile Class 9 safety hazard under 49 CFR Section 173.185. Then I uploaded my evidence. I attached PDF copies of the emails Gregory Croft had sent me over the past week, specifically the ones where he ordered me to bypass the safety hold and classify the shipment under the retail exemption. I also uploaded a copy of my signed termination notice, which clearly showed I had been fired for refusing to sign those exact fraudulent documents. I clicked the final submit button. The system generated a whistleblower case number, WC 2026-99482HZI, printed the confirmation page, placed it in a physical folder, and closed my laptop. It was exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The entire process had taken less than 2 hours. For the first time in 18 years, I had nothing to do. No driver logs to audit, no hazardous manifests to verify, no emergency calls about spilled cargo or delayed trucks. I walked downstairs to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of iced tea, and walked out onto my back deck. The autumn leaves were turning gold and red, falling gently onto the lawn. I sat in a wooden chair, listening to the wind rustling through the trees, feeling a deep, quiet peace. I knew exactly what would happen next. The wheels of federal bureaucracy are slow to start, but once they begin to turn, they are impossible to stop. The disassociation notice would trigger an automated alert to Vanguard's compliance dashboard. But Jason, with his automated compliance API, would have no idea what that alert meant. He would likely ignore it, thinking it was just a routine system update. Meanwhile, the whistleblower report would be routed directly to the FMCSA regional office in Chicago and the DOT Border Compliance Office in Detroit. By tomorrow morning, Vanguard's DOT profile would be flagged with an active out-of-service order for hazardous transport. I took a sip of my tea and smiled. Gregory Croft wanted to cut the safety director to save money. Tomorrow, he was going to find out exactly how expensive a cheap director could be. I woke up at 7:30 on Tuesday morning, did a light workout, and made a fresh pot of coffee. I was sitting at the kitchen table, reading a logistics newsletter, when my phone started to vibrate. The caller ID showed the main line for Vanguard's Chicago headquarters. I took a slow sip of my coffee, set the mug down, and let it ring. It went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it rang again. This time it was Gregory Croft's cell phone. I declined the call, then came a text message from Croft. Marcus, answer your phone. Emergency. I ignored it. I knew exactly what the emergency was. 300 miles away, at the Ambassador Bridge border crossing in Detroit, the trap had snapped shut. The bridge is the single busiest commercial border crossing in North America, handling over 10,000 trucks a day. On a Tuesday morning, the flow of freight is a finely tuned machine. If a truck gets delayed at the inspection gate for even 10 minutes, it creates a traffic jam that stretches back for miles into the highway. At approximately 5:15 that morning, the lead truck in Vanguard's convoy, a brand new Kenworth, driven by an experienced owner-operator named Dave, had rolled onto the automated scales at the Detroit weigh station. As the tires crossed the scale, the overhead high-speed cameras captured Vanguard's DOT number printed on the cab door. The system queried the Federal FMCSA database. Within milliseconds, the compliance screen inside the weigh station flashed a bright red alert. Kara step. Out of surface. No active designated safety official. Expired hazmat permit. The automated gate arm at the end of the scale remained down. A loud siren sounded, and a DOT officer stepped out of the booth, holding a glowing orange wand, gesturing for Dave to pull his rig into the secondary inspection bay. Within the next hour, 41 other Vanguard trucks, all carrying the same Shenzhen lithium-ion battery cargo, rolled into the same trap. Because the trucks were traveling in a tight convoy to meet the expedited delivery window, they were caught one by one. The secondary holding lot at the border crossing was quickly overwhelmed. Filled to capacity with Vanguard's orange and white trailers, the border inspectors, alerted by the whistleblower report I had filed the day before, didn't just check the carrier status. They demanded to see the manifests. When they compared the physical shipping labels on the pallets to the digital manifests, they found the discrepancy. The cargo was listed as non-regulated retail electronics, but the physical boxes contained raw, high-capacity lithium-ion battery cells without the legally required UN 38.3 certification documents. Under federal maritime and transport security laws, shipping uncertified hazardous materials under a false manifest at an international border crossing is considered a major security breach. The border agents didn't just issue a citation, they locked the gates, called the Department of Homeland Security, and impounded the entire 42-truck fleet. My phone rang for the 7th time. This time, the caller ID showed the name of Vanguard's chief executive officer, Arthur Caldwell, the son of the retired founder. Arthur was a decent man who mostly handled the client relations side of the business and trusted the operations to the board. I swiped the screen and answered. Marcus. Arthur's voice was shaky, devoid of his usual polished salesman confidence. Thank God you picked up. We have a massive crisis. Good morning, Arthur, I said, keeping my voice calm and polite. What's going on? The border is shut down, Marcus. The DOT has impounded 42 of our trucks at the Ambassador Bridge. They're saying we're operating without a safety license, and they're talking about manifest fraud. The client is threatening to cancel the entire $3 million contract, and the Port Authority is charging us $25,000 an hour in demurrage fees. I have Gregory Croft here in my office, and he says you did something to our database. I didn't touch your database, Arthur, I said. I was fired yesterday, remember? Gregory had me escorted out of the building. I heard the phone being grabbed away. Gregory Croft's voice came screaming through the speaker, so loud I had to pull the phone back from my ear. Vance, you hacked the federal portal, Croft yelled, his voice cracking with rage. You deleted our safety credentials. That is computer fraud, you hear me? I'm calling the police. I'm going to have you arrested. I didn't hack anything, Gregory, I replied, my voice dropping into a cold, steady tone. The FMCSA portal access is tied to my personal safety credentials and my social security number. When you terminated my contract for cause, I simply logged in and removed my name from your company's profile. I am no longer your safety director. Therefore, I have no legal right to represent your company on federal documents. I was simply complying with the law. You log back in right now and put it back, Croft screamed. We are losing $50,000 an hour. Our reputation is being destroyed. Log in and fix it, and I'll write you a check for $50,000 right now. I can't do that, Gregory. Even if I wanted to, the system doesn't work that way. To register a new DSO, the applicant must upload their safety certifications and prove they have at least 10 years of verified logistics compliance experience. Your new director, Jason, doesn't have those credentials. The federal system will reject him instantly. We'll use your name, Croft barked. We'll pay you a consulting fee. Just let us use your license for the week until we get this sorted out. That is called credential fraud, Gregory. That's a felony under 18 U.S.C. Section 1001. I spent 18 years keeping my record clean. I'm not going to federal prison so you can get your EBITDA bonus. You ruined this company, Croft roared. I'll sue you for every dime you have. I'll tie you up in court for the rest of your life. You can try, I said softly. But before you call your lawyers, you might want to check your email. I sent a full archive of our correspondence to my personal legal counsel yesterday. That includes the emails where you ordered me to bypass safety regulations, and the ones where you threatened to fire me if I didn't falsify the shipping documents. I also have the whistleblower case number from the Department of Transportation. If your legal team contacts me, my lawyer will hand those files directly to the federal prosecutor. There was a sudden, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Croft's heavy, panicked breathing, but he didn't say a word. The realization of what he had done was finally sinking in. He had walked into a trap of his own making, and the doors were locked from the outside. I heard the sound of the phone being taken back by Arthur Caldwell. His voice was quiet now, hollow. Marcus, is there any way to resolve this? Arthur asked. Not with Gregory Croft running operations, Arthur, I said. If the board of directors wants to have a serious conversation about compliance and restructuring, they can have their legal counsel contact my attorney. But as for Gregory, I'd suggest he starts packing his desk. He's going to need a lot of cardboard boxes. I clicked the end call button, set my phone back on the table, and took another sip of my coffee. It was still warm. The emergency board meeting of Vanguard Logistics Group took place that very evening. I wasn't there, of course, but Hank, the security guard, gave me a blow-by-blow account of the exit parade the next morning. Gregory Croft had been summoned to the executive floor at 6 in the evening. By 6:45, he was seen walking out of the building carrying his own cardboard box. He didn't have his smug smile anymore. His face was pale, his eyes red, and he was sweating through his expensive Italian suit. He had been terminated immediately for gross negligence and willful misconduct, a move by the board to protect the corporation from personal criminal liability. His nephew, Jason Croft, was escorted out of the building 10 minutes later by 2 security guards, leaving his brand new desk completely untouched. The fallout for Vanguard was catastrophic, but it was exactly what they deserved for letting greed steer the ship. The Department of Transportation levied a civil penalty of $2.4 million against Vanguard for shipping uncertified Class 9 hazardous materials under falsified manifests. The electronics manufacturer pulled their $3 million shipping contract and sued Vanguard for breach of contract, citing the massive delays that had halted their Canadian assembly lines. Vanguard's reputation in the industry was in tatters. Their stock price plummeted, and their insurance company immediately notified them that their premiums were being tripled due to the safety downgrade. Without an active DSO on record, they couldn't haul a single pallet of regulated cargo. The company was bleeding nearly $80,000 a day. On Friday morning, my phone rang again. It was Arthur Caldwell. His tone was humble, almost deferential. Marcus, he said quietly. The board has authorized me to make you an offer. We want you back. We'll double your old salary, give you a written guarantee employment for 5 years, and restore your full benefits package. We just need you to log into the portal and register as our DSO today. I leaned back in my office chair, spinning the brass Kenworth truck on my desk. I appreciate the offer, Arthur, but I'm not interested in coming back as an employee. I've realized I quite enjoy my mornings at home. There was a long pause. I could hear Arthur shuffling papers on his desk. Marcus, please, the company is going under. We have 42 rigs sitting in Detroit, and our logistics partners are threatening to pull their lines. What will it take? I'll send you a contract draft, Arthur, I said. You can review it with the board. If they sign it, I'll have the trucks moving by Monday morning. I sent the draft an hour later. I had spent the previous evening drawing it up with my attorney. The terms were non-negotiable. First, Vanguard would hire my newly formed consulting firm, Vance Compliance Solutions, on a 5-year retainer. The retainer fee was $25,000 per month, equivalent to $300,000 a year, which was triple my old salary. Second, my contract specified a maximum of 5 hours of work per week. My duties would be limited to remote auditing of manifests and signing off on compliance logs. Any additional work would be billed at a rate of $500 per hour. Third, Vanguard had to pay a lump sum of $180,000. This was the exact amount of the 6-month severance package Gregory Croft had tried to cheat me out of, plus my accumulated vacation time and legal fees. Fourth, the safety department would be restructured. The compliance director would now report directly to the board of directors. Not the CO. The safety official would have absolute, unchallengeable veto power over any shipping lane. Finally, I was to be given a non-voting advisory seat on the board of directors, ensuring that no executive could ever again try to slip a fraudulent shipment past the safety department. The board didn't even try to negotiate. They had no cards left to play. By Friday afternoon, the wire transfer cleared in my bank account. Seeing the balance update with the $180,000, plus the first month's retainer of $25,000, was a sweet moment of absolute vindication. On Monday morning, I woke up, poured my coffee, and sat at my home office desk. I plugged in my YubiKey, logged into the FMCSA portal, and registered Vance Compliance Solutions as the authorized compliance consultant for Vanguard Logistics Group. Within minutes of my registration hitting the database, the DOT cleared Vanguard's status. The out-of-service order was lifted. The 42 trucks at the Ambassador Bridge were allowed to return to Chicago to have their cargo properly unloaded, repackaged, and inspected. Vanguard lost millions on that shipment, but they survived. They learned a very expensive, very painful lessons. In the world of heavy logistics, safety regulations are not suggestions, and the people who enforce them are not obstacles. Now, my days are quiet. I spend my mornings walking through the park, reading, and working on my garden. On Friday afternoons, I spend about 2 hours logging into the Vanguard database, reviewing their manifests, and signing off on the clean shipments. Sometimes I look at the brass model truck on my desk. It reminds me of the millions of miles driven by honest people who rely on safety coordinators to make sure they get home to their families at the end of the day. Gregory Croft thought he could treat safety like a line item on a spreadsheet, something to be cut and discarded for personal gain. He tried to play a high-stakes game with federal law, using my license as his collateral. But in the end, he found out that the rules apply to everyone, and that sometimes the guy with the safety stamp is the one who holds all the cards.